John Walker lived alone at the edge of the human colony on planet Eltora. It was a quiet place surrounded by dense purple forests, glowing insects, and strange animal cries at night. Most humans stayed close to the main city, afraid of what lived in the wild. But John liked the silence. He liked being far from everyone else. One evening, the sun dipped below the jagged hills, and John checked the trap he had set earlier that morning. It was a simple snare, strong enough to catch small alien animals for food. But as he got closer, he heard something different this time. Not a growl, not a hiss. It was crying. John stopped and listened. A soft, trembling sound came from the trap ahead. Carefully, he approached. His boots crushed glowing mushrooms underfoot, lighting a path in the growing dark. Then he saw her. A small alien figure was caught in the net, hanging above the ground. She had lavender skin that shimmered in the fading light, long white hair tangled in the cords, and wide, glowing eyes full of fear. She wasn't a beast. She looked young, maybe his age, or younger, humanoid with 4 fingers and delicate arms. When she saw him, she screamed. John froze. "It's okay. It's," he said, raising his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." But she didn't understand. She thrashed harder, making the ropes cut into her skin. Her voice trembled, speaking in a strange musical language. One word repeated. "Gar. Gar. Gar." John didn't know what it meant, but the terror in her eyes was clear. He stepped forward slowly, trying to show her he wasn't dangerous. "I'm just going to help you down, all right?" She stared at him, breathing hard. Then she did something that made him stop cold. She pointed at him, then at her mouth, then made a slicing motion across her throat. John blinked. "Wait, do you think I'm going to eat you?" Her eyes filled with more fear. She nodded. John's heart sank. "No, no, no," he whispered. "That's not what I do." She didn't understand his words, but maybe she could understand his actions. He carefully climbed the tree and loosened the rope, lowering her to the ground. She didn't run. She just sat there, breathing fast, arms wrapped around her knees, watching his every move. Like a rabbit waiting for the hunter to strike. John slowly pulled out his water bottle and placed it near her. Then he backed away. She didn't touch it at first. She only stared at him. But after a few minutes, when he turned away, he heard the sound of her drinking. Small progress. Night was falling fast. The forest came alive with strange alien sounds, buzzing, hooting, and whispers that weren't wind. John knew it wasn't safe to stay out, but he couldn't leave her here either. "Come with me," he said, pointing to himself, then to her, then toward his cabin. She didn't move. John sighed, rubbed his face, then gently took a step toward the path. To his surprise, she followed. His cabin wasn't much, just a metal shelter with solar panels, a small bed, and supplies. He let her sit by the fire and handed her a blanket. She flinched, but accepted it. She still didn't speak to him, just stared. John made some dried food, but she didn't eat. She only sniffed it, then pushed it away. He didn't blame her. She was terrified, alone, probably far from home. That night he tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every few minutes he'd peek toward her. She sat in the corner, knees hugged to her chest, eyes never closing, always watching. She truly believed he was going to hurt her, and that thought haunted him. He had no idea where she came from, no idea if others were looking for her, no idea what she was doing on this planet. But one thing was certain. John Walker hadn't just caught an alien girl in his trap. He had caught a secret. And the forest wasn't the only thing hiding danger now. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky above Eltora glowed faintly with a bluish mist. Inside John's cabin, silence pressed heavy in the air, except for one sound. A quiet click. John's eyes opened. Something cold touched his neck. He didn't move. Very slowly he turned his head and froze. The alien girl stood beside his bed, holding one of his tools like a weapon, a sharp metal rod. Her hands trembled and her face was pale with fear. She wasn't trying to attack him. She was trying to defend herself. Jera. John whispered the name he had guessed for her last night. He didn't even know if it was right. Hey, easy. I'm not your enemy. She didn't respond. Instead, she pointed at her own wrist, then at his mouth, and then down to the fire pit where he had cooked last night's meal. The message was clear again. She still believed he wanted to eat her. John slowly sat up, hands raised. I don't eat people, he said calmly. Not aliens, not anyone. Of course, she didn't understand his words, but maybe she could understand his next action. John walked to the food crate, opened it, and took out a sealed meal packet. Then, in front of her, he tore it open, took a bite, and handed the rest to her, still chewing, showing her it was safe. She looked at the packet, looked at him, then sniffed the food. Very carefully, she took a bite and didn't spit it out. John gave a breath of relief. Progress, he whispered. She sat down across the room, still watching him closely, still holding the metal rod. But she didn't point it at him anymore. Over the next few hours, the silence turned into something different. Not friendly, but not full of fear either. John spent the morning fixing solar panels while she stayed near the door, never going. Too far, always looking for escape routes. She didn't speak his language, but she mimicked some of his actions. When he cleaned his hands, she did too. When he drank water, she waited, then drank hers. It wasn't trust, but it was something. Then, that afternoon, something strange happened. A loud screech echoed from the forest. John stood up quickly, hand on his sidearm. But before he could even react, the alien girl ran forward, grabbed his arm, and pulled him down. She made a series of sharp hand signs and noises. Warning signs. Wait, you know what that is? He asked. She nodded quickly. Then she pointed, toward the sound, then to herself, then back toward the hills. It was chasing her. That screech wasn't just an animal. It was a tracker. John realized something then. She didn't just fear him. She feared something worse. And she wasn't hiding from humans. She was hiding with one. That evening, she picked up a stick and started drawing shapes in the dirt. John sat across from her, trying to understand. She drew a large ship, then a smaller. Pattern. She circled the pod and pointed at herself. You came from the big ship? He asked. Then crashed here? She looked confused. Then she shook her head, erased the pod, and drew a tall, spiky tower with a glowing circle at the top. She pointed to it, then pointed to her wrist, like a bracelet. John's face went serious. A tracker tower. Suddenly, it all made sense. She was not just a lost girl, she was an escapee. Someone was keeping aliens prisoner, or worse, and she had gotten away. But now they were coming to find her, and she was sure John was one of them. That night, she didn't sleep. Again. But she didn't sit in the corner either. She sat on the floor near the fire, the rod beside her. And for the first time, she said a word he could understand. Friend? John smiled. Yes, he said quietly. Friend. But outside, far in, the distance, 3 small red lights blinked between the trees. Someone or something had picked up her trail again. And this time they were getting close. She cried in her sleep that night. John didn't mean to watch her, but he had been awake, sitting near the fire, thinking about everything. About the alien girl now lying under a blanket he gave her. About how she finally said friend. About the 3 blinking lights in the forest that vanished before morning. And then he heard her whispering, soft, broken words in her strange language. Her body trembled. Her arms were tight around herself. Her tears glowed faintly in the darkness, just like her eyes. She was dreaming of something horrible. John wanted to wake her, but he didn't. He knew the fear in her eyes when she saw him. Even now, Even after food, warmth, and kindness, she still flinched sometimes. The bond between them was forming, but it was fragile, like glass on the edge of breaking. By morning, the rain had started. John wrapped his coat around her shoulders before stepping outside to check his scanners. He had wired some sensors to detect motion nearby. If those lights in the trees were real, they'd leave tracks. And they did. Footprints. But not human. Not from any wild animal either. These were deep, long, and lined, like boots designed for alien terrain. Someone had come close last night. Too close. When he returned, she was awake. She had cleaned the corner of the cabin, folded the blanket, and placed his tools neatly in a row. Strange. It was almost like she was trying to thank him in her own way. John picked up a stick, sat next to her, and drew a smiley face in the dirt. She looked at it, then at him. He pointed to the drawing. Happy. She stared for a moment, then took the stick, turned the smile into a flat line. Not happy. Then she added tiny dots around it. Tears. Sad. John nodded slowly. She drew another symbol, this one a circle with 2 dots inside it, then drew a hand next to it, and a small stick figure beside the hand. She pointed at the figure, then at herself. You were taken, John guessed, from your people. She nodded slowly. She drew 3 tall figures with strange marks on their heads. She pointed at them, then crossed them out. Bad people, kidnappers, hunters. Whatever they were not her family. They were not her people. They were the danger, and now they were probably coming. That afternoon, the two worked together for the first time. John set traps near the edge of the forest, not to catch food, but to slow anyone tracking her. She followed him, silently watching, copying his knots and rope techniques. She wasn't just learning, she was surviving. At one point, while hiding a tripwire, their hands touched. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at his hand for a moment, then pressed her palm gently to his. 5 fingers to 5 fingers. Different skin. Different species. But the same message. I don't fear you anymore. Later, as rain dripped through the leaves, John took out a small music player from his gear. He hadn't used it in weeks. He played a soft melody, something old, human, slow, and peaceful. She turned her head at the sound, wide-eyed, like it was magic. For a long time, she just sat there listening. And then, without words, she started to hum along. Not the tune, not exactly, but something close. It wasn't perfect, but it was a bond. A silent bond built not with language, but with shared moments. Then, just as the music ended, a sharp beep came from John's scanner inside the cabin. Motion. One of the outer traps had been triggered. John stood up fast, grabbed his weapon, and looked toward the tree line. She stood beside him now, not behind him, not hiding, and for the first time she said a second human word. Danger. John nodded. Whatever was out there wasn't random, it was tracking them. And the silent bond they had built, it was about to be tested. She handed him the weapon, not because he asked, not because she trusted him fully, but because she wanted to try. John looked at the small energy knife now in his hand. It had belonged to her, part of the alien gear she carried in a hidden pouch. She had kept it secret for days. And now, she gave it to him. Why? He asked softly. She didn't answer with words, just pointed at the scanner showing the red blinking light. Someone's coming. You protect. I believe. It wasn't spoken, but it was understood. The trap outside had been triggered, but whatever set it off was gone now. No body, no blood, just bent branches and a single black mark burned into the tree. That wasn't from an animal. It was a signal. John looked at the girl. She stood beside him, not afraid, but ready. He was sure now. She had been trained once, before she became a runaway, before she ended up in his trap. There was something dangerous inside her, something wild, but it wasn't aimed at him anymore. That night, the fire inside the cabin burned low. Rain pattered gently on the roof. The alien girl sat closer to him now. Still cautious, still quiet, but no longer cold. She stared at the flames, then picked up a burned stick and began drawing again. But this time it wasn't about her past. She drew him. A tall human, stick arms, square face, holding something in his hand. A weapon? No, a shield. Then she drew herself beside him. Tiny, fragile, but also holding a shield, side by side. John smiled. You think we're on the same side now? She tilted her head, then pointed to the word she had learned yesterday. Friend. The next morning, John gave her something too, an old comm device, small, worn out, and barely working, but still useful. He had modified it for short-range signals. He showed her how to press the red button to call for help if they got separated. She pressed it, then looked at him. Boom? John laughed. No, help, not boom. She giggled softly. It was the first time he heard her laugh. They spent the day building defenses, not walls, not weapons, but warnings. John taught her how to lay sensor threads along the trees. She showed him how to use colored sap from certain plants to mark safe paths, something he never knew. Together, they made the cabin safer. Together, they learned. When the sun began to set, John climbed the roof to adjust the solar panel. Halfway through, he slipped and nearly fell. But she was already there, catching his arm, holding tight. He looked at her, surprised. Thanks. She nodded, then whispered, something in her language. He didn't understand the words, but the way she said them. Gentle, careful, they sounded like a prayer. That night, as they shared dried food, she pointed to herself and said, Ra. John blinked. Jera, that's your name? She nodded, then pointed at him. He smiled. John. She tried it. June. Close. Enough. He chuckled. Then she looked at the cabin door, then at him. Stay? John tilted his head. You mean, here? With me? She nodded again. Safe. Here. John looked at her. A runaway alien girl who once feared he would eat her. Now, asking to stay because with him, she finally felt safe. But just before they slept, the scanner beeped again. This time, 2 red dots, moving fast, coming closer. Jera stood instantly, her hand reached for the knife she had given him earlier, not to take it back, but to stand beside him again. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The bird stopped singing. Not one chirp. Not one flutter of wings. Just silence. John noticed it first. He stood outside the cabin, mug of warm water in hand, watching the trees. The air felt heavier than usual, like something was pressing down from the sky. Shara noticed too. Her ears twitched. She stepped beside him without a word. Then they both looked up. A strange shimmer moved between the clouds, like heat waves, but in the shape of something huge. Jera's face turned pale. Her lips parted. Watcher. John narrowed his eyes. What? She pointed up, then made a circling motion with her hand. Watcher. Sci-Fi. No hide now. It wasn't just a ship. It was a scout drone, invisible to normal eyes, watching everything below, watching her. Back inside, John slammed the door and started pulling blackout covers over the windows. How long do you think they've been scanning us? Jera didn't answer. She sat on the floor, drawing again, but this time her hands were shaking. The image she made was a circle with long lines stretching out like arms. At the end of each arm, dots, ships, eyes. They weren't just searching from above. They had already surrounded this sector. John clenched. His fists. They're not giving up on you, are they? Jera shook her head, then drew a symbol for herself. And one more dot behind the circle. She pointed at it, then at herself, then whispered one word. Escape. John finally understood. She wasn't just running from them. She had escaped from deep inside their base. She was never supposed to make it out. And now? They were correcting their mistake. Suddenly the comm unit crackled. A sound, low, static-filled, came through. Then, a voice. Unfamiliar. Cold. Alien. Return the subject. You are harboring classified material. Non-compliance will result in termination. John stared at the device, then looked at Jera. She had gone still, her face blank, her body trembling. No, John said loudly into the mic. She's not going anywhere. Silence. Then, softly, you will die for her. John turned to Jera, but she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the door. Her hand reached for the rod, not out of fear, but readiness. As night fell, the forest around the cabin changed. No creatures, no breeze, just that heavy pressure again. John placed extra traps outside, lasers, wires, even his emergency EMP flare. Jera helped, hands quick and steady, faster than before. She wasn't afraid now. She was angry. Inside, she began placing strange markings along the walls using crushed glowing berries. John didn't know what they meant, but they pulsed faintly like they were alive. Protection? He asked. She nodded. Old way. My people. Before them. Before those who hunted her. She wasn't just an escaped prisoner. She was part of something older. Something they tried to erase. Late that night, John heard movement in the trees. 1 step, 2 steps, then silence. He aimed his weapon through the small hatch. Nothing, but he knew better. They're watching, he whispered. Jera sat near the fire, again. But this time, she was the one who picked up the music player. She pressed play. A soft human tune filled the room. John turned. She didn't look scared. She looked calm. And then she whispered something new. Together, not afraid. John sat beside her, outside, hidden in the dark. They watched, but inside, near the fire, the hunted no longer felt alone. She remembered the screams, not from her, from the others. Dozens of young aliens like her, trapped in glowing cages, poked, with metal rods forced to look at bright lights until they fainted. Their names were taken, their languages erased. And every night someone was taken and never returned. Jera had survived by pretending to obey, pretending not to cry, pretending to forget who she was. But she never forgot, not even when she escaped. Now she sat by John's fire, her face glowing with the soft light of the flames, eyes distant. She didn't speak, but her fingers moved through the dirt, drawing a symbol she had never drawn before. A symbol of home. 3 moons above a tower, 2 curved lines beneath it. John noticed. That's not another warning sign, is it? She shook her head. Where you came from? She nodded once. Then she looked up, and for the first time she spoke more than a word. Born, not in cage. I had sky. John was stunned. You're remembering now? Jera closed her eyes. My people. Before, gone, taken. I was taken too. And just like that, the truth began to come out, piece by broken piece. She wasn't just an escaped test subject. She was the last child of a free alien tribe that had vanished years ago, long thought extinct. Her people lived in harmony with nature, blending into the forest using light and music as part of their culture. Until a faction of alien scientists, ones claiming to be peacekeepers, raided her homeworld. They called it a research operation, but Jera called it something else. Harvest. Children were taken, their abilities studied, their bodies changed. John listened in silence, trying to make sense of it all. You were experimented on? Jera looked down. Yes. They try to make better. Better for what? She slowly traced the shape of a human in the dirt. Then a second figure, taller, cold, mechanical eyes. They want us to copy you, but also control you. John's eyes widened. They were making weapons? Jera nodded. Living tools, like me. John stood pacing. And you escaped. That's why they're so desperate to get you back. Jera touched her chest. They fear what I remember, what I am. Just then the comm crackled again. This time the voice was different, softer, familiar. It was a human voice. This is Officer Lee of the Earth Alien Peace Division. We know what she is. She's dangerous. Let us handle this. John frowned. No way, she's not dangerous. You don't understand what you're protecting. She's unstable, modified, a threat. John looked at Jera. She sat quietly, watching, not hiding, not attacking. He turned off the comm. She's not a threat, he muttered. She's a survivor. Later that night, Jera stood outside under the moonlight. She raised both hands and began humming, low, soft, like a song only the forest could hear. The trees responded, leaves shimmered, the air changed. John stepped closer. What are you doing? Jera looked back with tears in her eyes, calling. Sky spirit, memory keeper. He didn't know what that meant, but he could feel it. She wasn't a weapon. She was something more, a key to something bigger than either of them, and someone, no, many, wanted to bury that truth forever. The morning was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but like the world is holding its breath. John stepped outside the cabin. No birds, no bugs. Not even the wind moved the leaves. The sky above was clear, too clear, as if something had pushed away the clouds. Jera stood beside the fire, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. Then she whispered, "They come now." And then, they came. 3 ships broke through the sky like falling stars, but they didn't crash. They hovered, silent, black, smooth like knives, and they landed right outside the forest line. John ran inside and grabbed his gear. Jera didn't move. She simply stepped forward, placing one hand on the ground, fingers glowing softly. "I will not run," she said. "No more." John looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "They took my voice, my name, my people, but they will not take my memory." The ships opened. Figures stepped out, not soldiers, not fully alive either. They were part machine, part alien, tall, cold, eyes glowing blue. The lead one spoke. "Subject ZH7. You are property of the UAR. Return now or be neutralized." John stepped between them. "She's not your subject, she's a person, and she's under my protection." The alien raised a glowing weapon. "You are irrelevant." Before he could fire, Jera raised both hands. A sound, deep, ancient, came from her chest. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a song, it was memory. Light burst from the trees. Glowing symbols, like the ones she had drawn, lit up all around the forest. The earth trembled. The air shimmered. John looked around in shock as trees bent back, roots lifting, revealing glowing crystals beneath the soil. Jera walked forward, her body pulsing with light. "You erased my people," she said, "but we left our truth in the ground." The soldiers raised their weapons. Too late. The forest answered her call. Vines struck from every side. Roots tore the weapons from their hands. Crystals burst through the soil, sending out pulses that shut down the ship's systems. The invaders were thrown to the ground, powerless. John stood there stunned. You called the planet," he whispered. Jera turned to him. "My people lived with this world, it remembers us." She knelt, pressing her forehead to the earth. And now, it remembers me. By nightfall, the ships were disabled. The attackers, taken away by Allied scouts who had picked up the energy waves. Peacekeepers arrived from the capital. This time, real ones. Zera was offered protection, sanctuary, but she chose something else. I stay, she told John. Here. With me? He asked. She smiled. Yes, you saw me, not as tool, not as threat, but as Zera. Weeks passed. Zera helped rebuild the cabin. She sang softly to the trees every morning. John taught her human stories. She taught him how to listen without words, and together, they built not just safety, but home.